The drummer is the heartbeat. Everything comes from him. The beat, the time. He is the heartbeat. It's just like the heart pumping blood to the rest of the body. He is the heartbeat of an orchestra, or a band, of a group. He is the heartbeat.
I was the dominated funk person. Jabbo was the swing shuffle funk. So we both had different funk grooves, and we would take the band would follow us. All the band members would follow us. We had the show. We were the leaders of the band. Brown did not have a band like that until Jabbo and myself got with him. We're going to do that.
Right, okay.
James Brown, of course, was a dynamic music creator, but his music, the style of his music was formed by the style of John Starks, Jabbo's drumming, and Clyde Stubblefield drumming.
Clyde and Jabbo gives me the good stuff that I need, to get down. You know what I mean? And it's great, I love it. I love it.
They changed the history of music. They're the fathers of funk drumming, It's a big deal.
These guys are just groovers. And the bottom line is that pulse. You have to learn how to play that groove. And these guys are the masters at it. And this would teach them how to groove. I mean, who else can do it better but Clyde and Jabbo?
Come on, Jabbo, let's get funky.
to hear Clyde play it, honestly, I have not figured out what Clyde has been doing yet. I don't know if anybody can tell you, but I know this. He has to be one of the funkiest drummers that I know.
One, two, three.
Let's give the drummer some.
Yeah.
It's May of '67. We've got a heck of a band with James Brown. And this is really the first tune with James Brown where you are featured as
Correct.
a drummer. It's like the first hit you ever recorded with James Brown.
First tune I recorded with him,
Right.
actually.
What's unique about it is that it made you famous. It made you the envy of every drummer.
Well, yeah, I didn't get too much after that, but
But let's break that down. James,
Yes.
you've got the basic rhythm of the tune, and then James calls out in part two, give the drummer some. So let's break that. What we
in
play.
Cold Sweat, you mean? Well, like that tune, I just got in the studio, myself in the booth, and started playing this riff. And Pee Wee and the bass players came in with me. So this is the way I, And I was just sitting in the booth playing that type of a rhythm, and everybody folded in with me, and that's how Cold Sweat started.
But James wanted you to play harder on the one. We've
Right,
heard that.
that's the one like. One. So that's, you always hit the one, dominate the one. That's the one that sets you to turn you around, ready to go again. So.
In another tune, a couple of years later, James called you out again.
Right.
It wasn't as famous.
Right.
It only became famous later, and that's Funky Drummer.
Correct.
So play that, and then we'll try to break it down.
All right. 1, 2, 3.
20 seconds, but it's been sampled hundreds, thousands
Hundreds
of times.
of times, yes.
We've never quite been able to figure out how it gets done. So break it down. Maybe we
Okay,
can
well,
get a
I'll
little-
play on my foot, I'll play. And my snare's going. You put them both together. It's just off rhythms. It's like syncopation's more the thing. They call them ghost notes, and I'm not sure what I understand what they mean by ghost notes. Ghost is notes that's not there, but I put them there. So, and it's just and that's that's the way I do my. I came up with that out of the blue, so it's my idea of how I feel the funk should be.
That's what's clear. What people need to understand is so much of that it comes from you improvising within a
Correct.
certain framework.
A feeling I have for that type of a turn, like they say. Now to put it all together. It's a simple beat, all the foot is going. And so That's it. That's the funky drummer. 1, 2, 3.
I got the feeling, 1968 with James Brown and that band, and this is a time when Pee Wee's writing much more intricate arrangements, but you've always told me that actually this pattern, and we'll listen to Mother Popcorn in a minute, were really somewhat similar to the things you'd always been
Similar
playing.
to the same syncopation in a sense, because on this particular tune, I'm doing. So it's like I'm doing the syncopations in the same, actually same, you could do Cold Sweat in this tune if you like. The bridge is different, and my rhythm pattern is actually different, but it's just one little beat that makes it stand out from Cold Sweat beat.
So show, how would you?
Okay, Cold Sweat beat is. Okay, I got the feeling this. So it's similar to the same real beat drum pattern, but with a different lick on it. So.
And you've got James kind of.
Right, James, and the guitar's pumping and the bass pumping on a different line, so it makes it all turns around a whole new thing.
Now, just about a year later, with Charles Sherrill playing bass, you cut Mother Popcorn, which was this incredibly funky track.
Yeah.
It's like a step up. So show us, play a little bit of that with Fred, and then we'll break it down.
1, 2, 3.
Incredibly syncopated.
Syncopated.
So show us
It's,
the
thing
similarities
I'm
and the differences.
on the bass drum, start in on the snare.
The whole time, you and the bass player keeping an eye on each other, and you're watching James.
Right,
As you
right.
set
Well,
up-
the bass player and I, we don't keep we know our grooves, so we locked in all we got to do is watch James.
Because it's set up like a live show.
Yeah.
In the
yeah,
studio.
Definitely, definitely. And we watch James, and we know what we're doing. We don't know what he's going to do, though. 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Let's Give It Up or Turn It Loose. That's the remake that you did with Bootsy and Catfish in the original JBs.
Right.
Where you did a slight variation on the original version that
right.
Nate Jones
Correct.
had done. So show us a little bit what you varied in there.
Right. The slight variation was it was a lick on the back beat, like 1, 2, 3. See, I was just hitting. It wasn't going. Okay, the spare rhythm, the original. So the original had a slight pullback beat in it, like Cold Sweat in a sense. It didn't go straight, but on the live cut, I played it more straight. So on the live version, I played it more with a 4/4 bill without the backbeat coming back, hitting back, cop. So.
Yeah, and you and Bootsy and Johnny Griggs are all feeding off each other. It's a very
Right,
rich kind of
right.
rhythmic. But I think what people really want to hear and see is the famous breakdown.
Okay.
You know, they go, clap your hands, stomp your feet, clap your hands,
Yeah.
stomp your feet, clap.
I don't know how to read music. I don't know nothing about notes. All I know is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever goes after that. But I said, I don't question how I play. I just sit down and if I think of something, like I might think of, and that's just what I just done. That's the way I gotta play. I gotta hear that on the drums. Or I might play. See, I gotta hear that. But I know I can do it. If I can hum it, I can play it. So that's the way I think. 1, 2, 3.
Oh, it's two in it.
A few minutes break, and then I'll ask Bob that this how does it.
Right, Jabbo is gospel. He's a gospel feeling and playing drummer. Bluesy, jazzy, and funky. All this in one.
One, two, three.
Jabbo, you know, when you first joined James Brown's band, you had come from Bobby Blue Bland's band,
Right?
and you brought a lighter touch to Brown's band than he'd been used to before. But when you joined, you had to play Melvin Parker's parts. Papa's Got a Brand New Bag, I Feel Good, or even Clayton Filia's parts from the earlier hits. Show me how you would have played. What was Melvin's part like?
Okay.
Like on I Feel Good.
Okay. I think I Feel Good was Melvin Parker's too.
Right.
And the approach Melvin had was, I think James had his approach from the hi-hat to the snare was a different, it was like a syncopated, it was like that. And, you know, we would play, let me do it and I'll show you what I'm saying when we go to that. You know, you're like, 1, 2, 3, show. Now, you hear me do that, and you hear the bass drum do. Now, when I came, I couldn't play it like that because it was wearing me out. I wasn't accustomed to that kind of pattern. So I said, okay, play it the way you would play it, because I got to play it. He's not here. So we'll do, well, wait, I play it. What you hear me doing is you hear. And you still hear the backbeat. You had to hear the backbeat in it. You know, it's still the same old. But you put a little, add a little to it. Yeah. That was that, yeah.
Now, fast forward a couple of years, James has really broken through in a big way. He's had Cold Sweat, he's had Get It Together, he's had Man's World. You're asked to play this tune called Lick and Stick, which brings in the lighter touch with the hi-hat. You've got Tim Drummond on bass, which is a little different from Bernard Odom. Show us Licking Stick and the kind of thing you brought to that.
Okay, Lick and Stick, like I say, was my idea of almost like a certain type of church almost, but then it had almost a little, maybe I say a little Latin feel, yeah. But you had that, and I've been hearing this and I wanted to play it with some things, and so I said, well, he said, do that thing you do, Jabbo, from the rim, because we used to just kid around with it. Mm-hmm. So this is what I came up with in Lick and Stick. 2, 3, 4. that's what you hear. But when I play it, you know, you still hear even though you don't hear me per se coming down on that one as they holler that. Yeah, but you hear but you hear it. If you know, you open up and listen to it. And then the rhythm pattern, then there was another thing that even on stage after it got to the point, because there were so many people sometimes, you wanted to change it around. And that's where I said, well, okay, I got another little way of playing what I'm doing. If you know, let me do that just a little to show you. Then we say, do, do, do. I'm sorry, but that's what you hear. But then after a while, with the whole rhythm section grooving in with it, it has a different sound, and you feel it a little different. But just playing it in the recording, that's what we did. That's the way we did that one, and that was my idea for that tune, you know.
So Jab, just 2 years after Licking Stick and this incredible time with that amazing band of the 60s, you find yourself with some teenagers in Nashville, Bootsy Collins on bass, Catfish on guitar,
Yeah,
Young Cats playing horns, and you record Sex Machine.
yeah.
How was that?
Turnaround, complete turnaround. I had, the old band had left, and we got with Bootsy. Never played with somebody that went over the bass like he was. And his brother complimented, so that means you changed a little bit. You changed what you were doing. I changed the way I played it to fit them, to fit that glove. But it was still the same 1, 2, 3, 4. But give you, for instance, Sex Machine. This is the way we played it. 1, 2, 3, 4. But at the same time, you hear that, and it was a little bit more going on with that, but it was just basically the same. That was basically the same thing that you played on that tune. It was just basic. You just added, and they said you add the ghost notes, and that's what I added. That's still a part of my playing, the little ghost notes that go in there. But it was so much different with that bass moving the way it was. Same thing with the other tune, Super Bad.
Because a couple of months later, you go back to the same studio.
Yeah.
James wants to recreate the magic.
Yeah.
Tell me about him in the studio and what you were feeling from him and Bootsy.
Okay, well, we wanted to, he said he figured this out, I can get the same thing as I got with Super Bad here. But then again, you have to, when you hear, Sex Machine, I can get Super Bad the same way. When you hear Super Bad, if you listen good enough, Super Bad is a dancer's tune. I think it's some of the things that Boots and them wanted to fool around with. You know how you fool around with patterns. And they were doing it, and he came in and he was doing his little dance. And I said, oh, I know what that is. That sound, I'm going to play something that dancers use a lot of tap dance. They do, now they use that, but it's like Georgia Brown, Sweet Georgia Brown, something to that nature. But then I said, if he's going to play that much with he and Catfish, I need to change it over a little bit. And this is what we came up with when I heard that. Now, you still got to understand that you're hearing what he's doing and you're seeing it. So you say, 1, 2, 3. And we'll play it, then we'll go to the bridge. And I'll have to play the bridge. what you heard me do there is an up-tempo version, and then sometimes it was a little more than that. But what you hear is, that's what you hear. But then while you're hearing that, you're hearing, you hear bop, 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 bop. And that's where you. That's still that dancer there. That's still that dancer with.
Back to the basement. Back to the practice room.
Okay, but that's what you hear in a slowed down version. It's just.
It's like a Joe Robinson, right?
It's a
Bojangles.
dance. It's a
Bojangles.
tune for dancers, and that's what but you have to listen to it. You have to hear what he's doing and what I'm doing.
Aspect,
yeah,
right.
and then I played my pattern, because
you're always key to what James is doing because you're set up like a live band in the studio.
yes, well, it's like you're doing a regular session, and it's just stuff I came up with from the days with Bobby Bland. My first solo was Turn On Your Love Light, the first solo on a record I played, and I went to the bell on that. And from there, when you hear the bell, you hear that, still that holiness feeling in it. That's what it is. Yeah.
When we first, musicians my age, James Brown was so important because it was the funkiest stuff, and we all wanted to play funk and jazz funk, and that music was the basis, really the basis for all jazz rock almost, and the drum parts were what we flipped out over, as much as anything. The way the drums, bass, guitar, keyboards, the vocals all work together, interlocking, So I think that they were the music, the rhythm is the music and the drums.
1, 2, 3, 4.
So make it funky.
Yeah.
Washington, D.C., this is barely a year after you played Superbad and Sex Machine with Bootsy and that band. Another adjustment, another band, a new bass player. Fred Wesley's back in the band. Fred Thomas is your bass player. Tell us about the adjustments and the kinds of things you played.
Well, it was still not a lot of adjusting to do. Basically, Fred came in, and you had to make sure that, I could fit into his groove. And Fred Wesley, we all had it together, and we would go into the rehearsal, and Fred would tell Fred Thomas what he wanted to play. Mm-hmm. And when he would do it, then I could go into what I was playing to add to what Fred was doing, but we still worked together because, most of the recordings that were done with Fred Thomas, I was a drummer on most of that stuff,
Well, Make It Funky seemed to be a special communication between you two.
Well, Fred had already had the arrangements the way he wanted them to go, but we would watch each other because we would know when, like you said, the bridge, that, you knew when that was coming. But then we had to have eye contact, but then James came in, and it changed a whole lot of things. You had to wait until he tell you he was going to the bridge, then you went to the bridge. And it was completely different from what we had already, but we basically had the structure already there. And if you'll notice that when he's playing, you hear me right back on that same, because that was one of James's patented things that he wanted you to do. You know, even though you can play a silent one, most guys will understand, but he wanted to hear like, he wanted to make sure it was dominant when he heard it, you know.
You had to always hit the one.
Oh yeah, always on the one, and it had to be dominant, you know. But it still was the same thing. It went back to my ghost notes then, but it was always, the one was always dominant. And a lot of times basically on the big stage, you had to hit it from your cymbal, you know, and then you could hear it and go from there. 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey, Jed.
Hey.
Sure getting down.
Yeah, we were done it. That was the shuffle. That was the shuffle. I bought that to James's band, but I did that first of all out there with Bobby Bland. And it's a thing that at that time that I was coming along, you had to be able to play it. If you couldn't play it, you don't. But it's not
Honky
hard.
tonk, right? It's like a Bill Doggett honky tonk kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's where I got mine from. You know, I saw Shep Shepherd play it. But it's just, you know, but there's 2 or 3 different ways you can play it. You can play. And then you can go to the bottom with the same thing. Then you can take all of them and do it like. And then put the one on the bottom. That you can do, but it's according to how the groove is going. And you want to get into another gear, as they call it, then you can move from your hi-hat to your ride. But you haven't changed anything, you're putting a little bit more bite to it too. And in that tune we were playing, and you were playing it like doing it to death. And at the time that we did that, you could hear the horns, and you would play like, is that? And but you kept the groove going, but you also made the hits with the horn. You know, they would make the hits, and you would do the hits with them. You know.
And so much of it too related to how Fred was playing his
Yeah,
bass.
yeah.
So maybe Fred can explain how he related to you and vice versa.
Well, actually, the first thing I thought of when James asked Jeff, you know, like to play the shuffle, and this particular shuffle that he was playing, all I could think of was that bass pattern, you know, that would just lock into it and make it just lope like that, you know what I mean?
So a lot of what you do is you're listening to him,
Yes, I listen
and he
to
locks
Jeff.
into you, and,
Yeah.
and you get a nice tight groove.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had that type of relationship playing together, you know, we just lock, whatever we played, we always was aware and paid attention to each other, you know, try to make sure that we locked it down. And he was the man, you know.
And then when you
made it easy, you know, for me.
and when you lock in with each other like that, then we were right close. If you ever noticed, we were close to each other.
Always.
And you know, you had eye contact, even though you were watching James, but you had eye contact with each other, and you heard each other, and that's the way you just lock into it, you know. And once you locked into it, you had it going. And even with our little rhythm going, that pattern we had going, when the horns started to hitting, then you thought big band, and you just, to me, that was, hey, hit with the band, and that made the whole thing sound like it was exploding, you know. When you heard that, that was the horns hitting, and you still had the shuffle going. And sometimes, according to however that shuffle you wanted to play, you can play it slow, You can play it fast, especially if you went to the bottom, if you up tempo with it and did it. So we'll do it like 1, 2, 3, 4. I would like for whoever that I play with or whoever would hear me play, I would like for them to regard me and say, well, at least he knew how to play time. He played time, and he knew how to fit in the glove with the rest of the rhythm section. I think, knowing how to lock in with a rhythm section, knowing what your function is as a drummer, and knowing that things are coming from me, that I have to help to keep everything else going.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, play. That guy like Clyde Holler.
Thank you, Clyde. Thank you. Hey, man. Yeah, that was about it.
Now, wait a minute. That was it, right?
Well, I was working at Polydor Records, and James Brown came in one day and put a tape on my desk and asked me if I would mix that tape. And basically that's how the whole thing started. So I mixed that tape, and then, you know, a long relationship started after that point. That particular song was The Good Foot, and from there I went on to do many of his records. So that's... With Clyde, the way he lays his foot into the bass drum, plays it real hard, you get a real good sound on the bass drum. He hits the snare nice and hard. That gives you a real punchy sound when you're recording. Jab plays a little lighter, so that lends itself to another type of sound, all right, which contrasts Clyde's sound. So from a sound standpoint, I can get two different sounds because their playing techniques both give you those types of sounds.
Hey, Jeb, what you do is never purely technical.
No. I'm, first of all, I think I'm very basic in my setup. I'm traditional in my stick holding. It's just traditional. Just basically speaking of what I do is, I can't sit low to play. I have to sit up above my instrument on the drums, and I play from the top, you know. And basically, for somebody who's beginning, it's how comfortable you feel at your setup. You may not feel comfortable with the way that I set up, and I don't feel, no two people are going to be comfortable in the same position, you know, but I try and sit up and play it in a position where I'm very comfortable with what I'm doing. And basically, you go back to just basic. It's not a technical thing with me. It's just plain old simple. I can get around. Everything is within reach. I don't like having to reach high or down on the floor for what I want. I want everything right where I can just move from one place to the next. That's comfort for me. Now, for someone else, it may be a little different. You know, the way I play the traditional way from my hi-hat to my snare, it's still different. But everything, if you notice, everything is right within reach.
But nothing's out of a book in the way you play.
No. I don't have cymbals up here, you know, and I don't have them down here. Not that I can't say that if you got a cymbal where you can play it like so, but it has to be just in reach of everything else. You know, because in the process to me of moving and going way up, it's a hassle for me, it's a problem. You know, I don't try to emulate somebody else or play the same way I see somebody else. I've learned to play what's comfortable for me. It's the same thing about practicing. I don't do a lot of rudimental practicing, which is not, that's just me. My wrist and thing are good. Sometimes I got a habit of flexing my hands or so, but I can't tell you how to practice. I can only tell you that you need it, and it's good for your wrist. It's good to always keep yourself flexible. But then again, sometimes when you hear things, they're not technical. Or when you do things, they're from within. And when you get stuff that's from within, then you better enhance yourself. Don't get me wrong. Some guys can do it, some can't. If you got an instructor and you're learning the basics to go the way that you go, it's fun the way that you play or the way they tell you you like the way you play. Good, but also tell them that you need to be comfortable. Or maybe they will tell you that themselves. Be comfortable sitting to your instrument, you know, to the drums, be comfortable there, you know. You can also do other things when you're playing, and one of the basic things that I tell the average young man or lady that's beginning to play. It's simple to a point, but you have to want to do it. You have to focus your mind and say, this is what I want to do. And it's not complicated, because once you get once you can get that and play that down, everything else you need to play can come from that. It's as simple as 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's what you do in between 1 and 4. If you want to, when it's simple, it's just simple 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's my interpretations of it,
Clyde, tell me about how you approach. You was similar, because both of you are about feeling. But tell me about where you sit on the drums and how you hold your sticks, and what you're feeling when you're at the kit.
Well, it's basically, I can sit on Jabo's drums and feel very comfortable, because we usually sit up in the same way, in a sense. He sits up professionally, and I can sit on his drums and feel real good. The difference between Jabo's playing, I play pencil stick and he plays traditional. And I play pencil stick like this. And occasionally I might have a cymbal up here and a cymbal up here. I have 4 cymbals sometimes. So the beat he was talking about, like, if you can't play, everything else comes from that, like. That's all. So it's simplicity and comfort. It's like getting in the car, putting on your seatbelt, and adjusting your seat and mirror and stuff. When we set our drums up, at least when I set mine up, I set mine up as comfortable as I can get them, and have everything in range where I don't have to do a lot of stretching. I want everything right in the area here where I can just sit. It's like being a cook in the kitchen, a chef in the kitchen. You don't want to go over here and start something cooking over here and go over to a stove over here to do something else. Everything is burning then. But you keep everything right in the area, and you can do anything you want to do, and it's very comfortable. That's the way I set up. And between my setup and Jabo's setup, like I said, I can sit on his set of drums and feel very comfortable just like I set them up. And I didn't set them up. And that's rare, because anybody that sets up my drum, I don't let nobody set up my drums, number one. Anyone that sets up my drums, I have to go and adjust them to my feel. I cannot play them the way they set them up.
Do you practice much? I know you play a lot. Both of you play still.
I practice mentally, walking, thinking. I sit down and practice. I don't have to have drumsticks in my hand. I'm constantly practicing. Talking to you, I'm practicing. I'm trying to find, I'm hitting rhythms as I'm talking to you. Like, I can be talking to you and rocking, and I'm in a rhythm all the same time I'm talking to you. So I practice constantly without drums or drumsticks. And that's good for a young person to know. You don't have to have the instrument to practice, but you have to have a discipline within your mind and yourself to be able to practice without those instruments, and then sit down and perform what you have thought about. So that's the idea of playing drums or any instrument that you prefer to play.
We're going to take a look and a listen now at each of your styles while you're next to each other, and if both of you can talk about each other's styles and what's different, what's similar, how you play off each other.
Right.
So, Clyde, particularly that wonderful syncopation you get,
Okay.
especially on I Don't Want Nobody to Give Me Nothing.
Right.
Play a little of that.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
All right. Hey, Jab, one thing that people love to hear is the way you play on Papa Don't Take No Mess. It's a great kind of, not just ghost notes, but Holy Ghost notes. There's something
Yes.
you get in that particular tune where you're following James. Play a little of that, and then we'll look at each other's styles.
Two, show.
I mean, there, really, you can hear, Clyde, you've got more of a direct attack on the drums, and
Correct.
Jab, you're a little lighter. So Clyde, or Jab, well, maybe you can tell me what you hear in Clyde that he does that you don't do.
Okay, well, Clyde's foot is real dominant. So you hear the domination of his foot while he's playing. While when you hear me play, I'm up top. I'm playing my foot, but I'm not as dominant, as forceful as Clyde.
Right.
So that's the difference in the play. You don't lose the groove, but it's not as forceful. There's a different force with my playing as compared to what Clyde is doing.
Now, Clyde, why would you, for you, why is that foot so important?
Well, you know, looking at the person up front when I was into it at that moment, those times, my foot was the 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. So my foot just. Jabo, he plays more of us moving drums on top. I play more of a sturdy drum on top with a sturdier foot drive. So he's more of a swing funk type player, and I'm more of a sturdy funk type player.
We were talking about that sanctified feel
Yeah.
that you get. Kind of that happy thing that you, that light on the
Yeah.
snare.
Well, then again, like I say, it's a holiness feel, you know. That's what that is. You got that going. And that's all I guess way I can explain. You got that going, you know. You hear the foot, but it's still on the 1 though. You must understand that you hear 1 because that was dominant when we were in the stuff that we were doing like that, you know. It was there, and you know, you had to make that known.
Right.
And you could hear it, and then you go from there. That's the way that was going, you know.
How'd you do it together on stage? We know that you played together for a time with James. James, have you started a tune that you would pick up in the middle? How did you balance each other on stage?
Yeah, we'll show it to you. Right. But you'll see my style of playing against Clyde's style. So if he told Clyde to start, Clyde would start, and then you can just point and see, or we'll show you how we did it. He would point back, he never would say anything, but he would point back to you.
Let the bass player.
Well, see,
What you guys
Fred'll
do.
keep playing,
Okay.
but then we'll know He'll know what we're doing. We won't lose his groove with us. You know.
You point to the one you want to start. Me come in. 1, 2, 3.
And something that would happen in the middle of a tune.
Oh, right,
Yes.
in the middle of a
Right.
tune, yes.
Now, would sometimes you play the foot and he would play the cymbal crashes or things like
Not
that?
even on,
No.
not on Brown, actually.
If he was playing, I'll show you what I would do to compliment him.
Right.
Go ahead and play it.
1, 2, 3.
But the most important thing is watching the man up front.
Right.
Yeah, that's it.
Watch
That
the
was
man
what
up
it was.
front.
Yeah, you had to watch him.
Because if you don't watch him, you're behind. You're lost.
Yeah. No catching up, you don't know where you are.
Right.
Yeah.
Whoever's in charge up front, that's the person
You're always
watch.
listening to him, to each other, to your bass player. You're always
Yeah.
listening.
But
Well,
you're always locked in.
Yeah,
so you're
we're locked
already locked in once it starts. So while you're locked in, you're still focusing on what's happening in front. That's whoever's in front of you, you're focused on them. Soloist, somebody directing or whatever, but you're already locked in with the rhythm section.
We don't have to watch the rhythm. We know what the rhythm's doing. It's just that person up front that's supposed to be directing and doing the production of the show. So any move they make, we make it, try to make it with them or whatever they need to make their show be right. We don't have to watch the guitar player, the bass player, nothing like that. We're going with our stuff.
It's like for the production part of it.
Yeah.
You know, you want to do some funny little things, make some hits and stuff. Just the production, we already know where we are.
Yeah.
So it's just out front. You get back with those guys, man, and we're just having a good time, you know, and you enjoy the relationship. Fred Wesley is like another brother of mine. You know, I've been playing with Fred, and they're all such fine musicians, you know, and you're honored to even be able to play with those guys, you know. It's something you can look back and tell people, say, hey, I played with those guys, you know, and that's a good feeling.
5, 4, 3.
1, 2, 3.
like to thank all of the musicians that work with us today.
Peace, love, and happiness, and good health to everyone.
Thank you.
Hey, girl, one of these mornings, one of these mornings, you're gonna rise up singing, rise up singing. Hey, spread your wings and take to the sky. Take to the sky. Hey, girl, until that morning, baby, ain't nothing gonna harm you. Nothing gonna harm you. Daddy and your mama.
Yeah.
Put that on there, man.
Yeah, you're right.
That's what I've been wanting.
You got it. You got to remind me of it.
Hey, pocket wave.
This is the message. And we're hoping that years to come, you know, this tape will be like in the Library of Congress, you know? You know what I mean? Because it's just so important with these guys.